Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Danielle Charmaine, for those of you who don't know me already. Today's video is a little bit different, as you can see, different than the content I normally bring to my YouTube channel. I wanted to just have a chance to be able to sit down and talk with you all because I have partially shared my story with you guys through social media, and it took a lot for me to really get on camera and talk about this. And if there's anyone who has ever been through the same situation that I have been through, then you would understand. It helps me to open up and to talk about it more instead of bottling things and keeping things to myself, which is just as painful. So if you don't know already, I lost my dad on April the 15th of this year due to some health issues. My dad was diagnosed with kidney failure 9 years ago. He had to get a kidney transplant, which he was on dialysis until he received his kidney transplant, which he had gotten from his sister. 9 years later, here we are again, and the kidney was starting to reject. So my dad he was on a restricted diet. He was constantly taking medication. He couldn't do all the things that he was able to do after he received his first kidney. This time, it started to affect his heart. He started to develop fluid around his heart where he would experience shortness of breath. If he tried to make it up the steps to go to his bedroom, he would have to stop in the middle of the stairway. In the process of all of that happening, he had to have his lungs tapped because he started to develop blockages and have stents put in and just all this crazy stuff. So after that, it was like he was back to normal, although we didn't really know how he was feeling because he was so prideful and he didn't want us to know how he really was feeling. He was back to normal. In my eyes, I saw that he was back to normal because that's what he displayed. For those of you who don't know, my dad was a bishop, so he had church every Sunday. He would get up in front of his large congregation and he would preach as if nothing was bothering him, even with him being on dialysis 3 days a week, getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning, having to be there by 5 and being on that machine until 9 a.m. that morning, coming home being tired. Like, it was just a repetitive process throughout the week, yet he still pressed his way every Sunday to make it to church, no matter how he felt. So afterwards, my dad had a bypass. So after that, he had to have a vax because the fluid had started to turn into like a jelly-like form. And then he started to develop this cough. And this cough would happen so often, it was like interfering with him trying to even hold a conversation. Just to see him have to go through that was stressful. That took him down. He was intubated. He was down for like a couple of days. We thought that we were going to lose him at that time, and that happened. This is probably like 3 years ago. He had to get a blood transfusion. After that, he started to develop delirium. After he came out of that, thankfully, he had to go through physical therapy, which he rejected. He didn't want to go to a physical therapy facility. He didn't want to do none of that. So we brought him home. His delirium was starting to scare us because he was doing things that were like out of the norm. But over time, he started to come back. Fast forward to this year, the valve in his heart started to narrow. And it started to develop a tightness in his chest. So here we are again, shortness of breath, can't make it up the steps, interfering with everyday normal activity. So a couple months ago, my dad was scheduled for an open heart surgery, and then it was to basically repair his aortic valve. We were banking on him getting his kidney transplant because he had finally found a match so that he wouldn't have to be on a list anymore and things like that. And we were excited, we were happy, but he couldn't get a transplant unless the things with his heart was fixed before going under to receive the transplant. So once they brought up the open heart surgery, I asked him, I said, Pops, I said, you're not afraid to get open heart surgery? And he said, no. He said, I can't preach faith and not have any. And for anybody who knew my dad, they knew that he was a very soft-spoken guy, very laid back. He was very dedicated to his ministry, and whatever it was that God had for him, he completed each and everything. So when he said that to me, it gave me a feel of relief, because it was like, you know what, you're right. So I kind of left it at that because I sensed that he was okay. But all in reality, he wasn't, because he had mentioned to his brother, like, I don't want to get this open heart surgery, but he knew that if he got it, that would put him back on his feet to getting the transplant and then him being able to live a normal life once again. So fast forward to a couple months ago when they mentioned the open heart surgery, I would say the whole COVID situation started to come about. So we were afraid for my dad to leave the house because obviously if he has health issues, the corona would affect him more because of his health issues. So I was so scared. My family and I was afraid for him to leave the house. We was afraid for him to do everything, but he was still holding church services with just like 10 people who were masked up, and he was not letting up. Like, he was sticking to that, like, you know, can't be fearful. You know, God didn't give us a spirit of fear. Like, he would preach that consistently. So my dad had did a series on faith, and this was around the time where they mentioned that he had to get the open heart surgery. So he was so strong in his faith that him getting this open heart surgery, it didn't bother him. But like I said, I don't know how it was really affecting him because he didn't show it if it was. Let's fast forward to March, probably like the end of March, early April. My dad started to develop the shortness of breath again, but it was to the point where now he kept saying that it felt like something was stuck in his chest. So we're going to fast forward to Easter. I was at my friend's house because she had a get together, and my mother and my father had went to church. And when they came back, my dad, he wasn't feeling well because a couple days before that, his doctor told him to come into the ER to get a cath because he was in a lot of pain. So he went into the hospital, which we couldn't go in with him because of the whole COVID situation. So he was by himself. We picked him up on that Saturday because we dropped him off on that Friday. When we picked him up that Saturday, he was okay. He seemed to be okay anyway. He was talking, he was joking around, he was himself. Fast forward to Sunday, Easter. He came home from church. He couldn't really get undressed because he was having shortness of breath. So he sat in the living room all day. He played the same song over and over again, which was Blessed and Highly Favored by the Clark sisters. It was a group of girls singing it on Facebook, and he played it like maybe 10 times in a row. And I kept asking him, and I said, Pops, why do you keep replaying that song? But in that very moment, I felt something, but I was in denial. I didn't feel death. I felt something, but I didn't know what it was. So I left, and then my mother called me and said, Danielle, where are you? Because your dad is looking for you. And it's so crazy because On my way home, I had a conversation with two of my friends, JD and Gladys, and JD was saying that months before his mother passed away, he would say, like, if something happened to my mother, I would probably lose my mind. Months later, his mother passed away, and all he could do was just pray for peace and strength, and because he knew he had to be strong for his family. And that very moment, us having that conversation of, you know, getting closer to God and doing things that God wants us to do. And I was like, if I lose one of my parents, I'll probably be in a straitjacket. And this was how I was feeling. But when I got home and I saw my dad was still sitting in the same spot that he was sitting in when I left earlier that day, it bothered me. So I said to him, I said, you still sitting in this same spot? You didn't move. You didn't take off your church clothes. You didn't do anything. Because when my dad would get home from church, he would get comfortable. And he said no. So I sat with him. My mother and my sister had ran out to Walmart to get him some aspirin because he was in pain. So the reason why he really wanted me home was because I think he felt something, and if something would have happened, he was only here with my nephew who's only 7 at the time. So it was like I needed somebody else here in case something happened. So him, my nephew, and we played a little game. At that moment, I started to feel something again. So something told me, Danielle, capture the moment, take a picture, make a video. And I'm going
We are family. We are family.
Why Pop's staring at the camera like that?
I got it. Eat.
So after I did that, I was okay. He went upstairs and he got sick. And he asked me to hand him the trash can. He started to throw up. He said he felt like something was stuck in his throat. So we took his clothes off of him and he laid down, and I laid in the bed with him, and I said, you know, he wasn't here because he was in the hospital overnight from the getting the cath a couple days before that. And I said, you know, I don't like it when you're not here. I was missing you. And I just kissed him on his cheek and he didn't say much. Monday rolls around. My mother took him to dialysis. She said he kept stopping. He kept telling her to stop the car, because he had to keep throwing up. So he said, I want to go to the hospital. At this point, he's like, I need to go to the hospital. Now, anybody who knew my dad, they knew he did not like the hospital. He wouldn't want to be there for nothing. But that's how you knew he was feeling some type of way. So my mother called his doctor and they said, you know, bring him in. He was scheduled for the open heart surgery sooner, which was Friday, April the 17th at the University of Pennsylvania. So after his dialysis, she took him to the hospital. A couple hours later, he came home, he rested, and then they went over to Philly, to the University of Penn. I called him on FaceTime and I said I was happy to see his face because he was talking to me and things like that. He seemed like he was in the decent spirits, but he did mention to me that he was tired and that he was in a lot of pain. But me thinking tired, I'm not thinking something was, you know, like he was tired of living. I'm just thinking like, okay, he's tired. Pops, get some rest. He talked to my nephew and I that night on FaceTime. And I said to him, I started breaking down. And I said, Pops, you're in there all alone. I said, you're not afraid. I said, you're due for this open heart surgery on Friday. I'm like, you're all by yourself. I'm like, you're not afraid. He was like, no, God is with me. Again, my dad was trying to be so strong for us that he did not want us to worry. So whatever he said, it just gave me so much relief. I said, okay. We hung up. Didn't talk to him again that night. Wednesday rolls around and I'm feeling weird. I'm feeling so weird. I started vlogging. I'm going to insert that clip. I'm back again, y'all. So this time I'm over here trying to figure out my hair situation because I'm about to take pictures or something, y'all. So I'm about to do my hair, try to figure out what I'm going to do to my hair, take some pictures or something in my little quarantine fit. All I got on is some sweats and a shirt. And that's just that. So, yeah. The death angels were around me because I started to feel like something wasn't right. I had talked to my mother earlier that day, and she said, you know, your dad is tired of living like this. So by her saying that, previous times before, I didn't think nothing of it. But that morning, I started to feel weird, and I started to just break down and cry. So I called my friend and I said, I'm getting ready to do my makeup. I said, I need to take some pictures. Now, we can't leave the house. Things are shut down, so it's not much that we can do. So I want to get cute and I want to take pictures and I want to do something that I enjoy doing to distract me from feeling the way that I feel. So my friend comes, we take pictures. I called my dad earlier that day. He didn't answer because my mother said he was at dialysis, but I'm still feeling weird. So I went to the supermarket with my friend because I was getting ready to prepare dinner. We get to the supermarket and I'm thinking to myself, my dad did all the food shopping, all the cooking. He didn't want none of us to do anything. So I get to the supermarket and I'm like, I might as well get used to this. I'm shopping. I'm like, because it's granted, it's getting ready to just be me and my mom, but this is just me in my own head. I'm not thinking of death. It's just me. I think God was preparing me, but I was being in denial. I leave the supermarket. I call my mother and I says, have you talked to my dad? And she said, yep, I just hung up with him. She said, he's getting ready to eat dinner. I said, okay, I'm getting ready to call him because every time I would cook, being as though my dad was the chef of the house, anything pertaining to cooking, I always needed his approval. So I called him, but he didn't answer. I called him at 6:05. He didn't answer. Okay, I started to prepare dinner. I was here by myself. I called my cousin on FaceTime because I'm still feeling shaky. A couple minutes later, my cousin walks in, which was great. And then my friend walks in 5 minutes later. I get a call on the house phone. I hear the house phone ring. I never answer, never, ever, ever answer the house phone. But on the last ring, I answer. I'm starting to get chills. It said University of Penn. So I answer and I hear the doctor say, is this Sadira Thompson? So I'm like, yeah, this is she, because I didn't think they would tell me any information, being as though I wasn't her. She says to me, your husband doesn't have a pulse, but we have the best team of doctors working around him. You know, we're trying to bring him back. So I'm like, what are you saying? Like, what are you saying? What are you saying? I'm like, scared. So once the doctor continues to explain to me what's going on, what happened, and as she's explaining this to me, I'm just like, I'm weak. Like I feel like everything in me was like crushed. Like my whole body just fell to the carpet, and I was just so weak. Like it was just a lot of emotions running through me right at that very moment. As the doctor's on the house phone on speaker explaining everything, I'm calling my mother on my cell phone. I called her once, no answer. I called her twice, no answer. I called her the third time and she finally picks up. And by that time, I'm trying to hold myself together, but I couldn't. So I said, Mom, where are you? And she said, I'm on my way home. What's wrong? I'm like, Mom, just pull over. She's like, what's wrong, Danielle? What's wrong? And I'm just like, Mom, like the doctor just called from the hospital and they're telling me that my dad doesn't have a pulse and that they're working on him. And it was a lot. So at that point, my mother's just like, God, please don't let this happen to me right now. Like the night before, my mother says that as she was driving home, it felt like something stabbed her in her stomach. And it hurt her so bad that she flinched. And in her mind, she was saying like, no, God, like, no, like, that's not, no. So to hear me say to her what I had said to her on her way home from work, it was like confirmation, like God was also preparing her as well as he was preparing me from feeling what I was feeling throughout the course of the day. So she gets home. and everyone's showing up to my house now. And now it's just the waiting game. Around 7:30, we get a phone call from the hospital again saying that my dad passed away. To hear that it didn't seem real. And for anyone who has ever experienced this type of situation before, losing a parent, losing a family member, losing a best friend, it just doesn't seem real in that moment. And I know for me, it just didn't seem real, and I didn't want to believe it because at 6:05 when I called him, he was transitioning, and I was expecting for him to either answer or to call me back. Like, it was just so many things going through my mind that I couldn't really process it. It was so many people around. It was just so much going on. But to hear how hurt my mother was and to hear her, it was just a lot. And throughout the course of the night, my friend's parents took us to the University of Pennsylvania to see him. My brother walked in first, and to see him walk in first gave me a relief because he didn't react the way that I probably would have reacted. Just to see him lay there lifeless was extremely heartbreaking. But what gave me some sort of peace at that moment was to see that he did not look like he was in pain. He didn't look like he was angry. He just looked so peaceful. He just looked like he was laying down, sleeping, just like he would if he was here at home. But to see him lay there and not be able to talk or not be able to interact with us or anything was like, whew. It was a lot to take in. We sat in the room with him for about 2.5 hours until all the nurses came in and did all the work, bagging him up and everything. We watched all of that. I know that he's watching us. I know that he is here. But to get unexpected news that we weren't even expecting to hear or wasn't thinking about, or, you know, that he's passed on, was like, it just didn't sound right. And then to this day, it still doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right because I'm so used to having him. And a lot of the times, we never realized how sick my dad really was, but because of who he was, he never displayed hurt. He never displayed stress. He never displayed anything because he didn't want us to worry, and he always wanted to be strong for us. And the humbleness in him is what gave me so much reassurance that everything was okay and that he would be okay. And that God got him, and God had him when he was laying in that hospital bed transitioning. He said it the night before. He said to me, God is with me. So he was not alone. Although we couldn't be there with him physically, he was not alone. God was with him. And God decided that he wanted to take him on home. The amount of support that we've had has been amazing. Like, the DMs that I've been getting, all the love that I've been getting, the flowers that has been sent to my house daily, people who have come here to comfort us, people who have stayed here to comfort us, people who have called and checked on me every single day, people who have just showed so much support. Like, I'm so grateful. I'm appreciative. And now that he has finished and completed his assignment, it's time for me to step up and do what it is that he instilled in me. So there it is. I decided to share this story with you guys because I know I have been posting on social media, everything, and I just wanted to give you guys an inside look on what's going on. I thank you all for watching and for allowing me to share this difficult story with you all and allow me to be able to open up. And thanks again, guys. I'll see you in my next one.